How much Dominican history do you know? Want to learn some fun facts? We have a great and fun way to test your knowledge and learn more about our history. Get your copy of Dominic Anu, Dominica in Puzzle. Fun for the whole family. Available now on Amazon.com. Visit pushpast10.com to learn more. Email us at dominicainpuzzle@gmail.com or call 877-698-9894.
Happy Tuesday to you. Happy Tuesday. Come on in, check in, post a message, let us know where you're joining us from. Welcome back to our Push Past 10 platform. If this is your first time joining us, I am Simone Matthew, and here on Push Past 10, we're all about advancing the lives of Dominican and Caribbean people at home on our beautiful islands, as well as overseas in the diaspora. So we have another great program for you. I hope that wherever you are, you're having a wonderful Tuesday. And for those of you who will see this on another day, I hope that your day is going very well. So we want to say a very special thank you to everyone who continues to share our content, who sees the value in what we do. So thank you to our regular listeners, our regular viewers on this platform. So come on in, share the live, let everyone know that we are here. Tag a few folks to let them know to join the conversation. As you can see streaming at the bottom of your screen, we are joined today by Mr. Paul Barron, and he has recently joined the Dominica Freedom Party as the General Secretary. So I'm sure you will have lots of questions for him as he takes on the new role of General Secretary of the Dominica Freedom Party. And I'm sure you will also have some questions about what exactly is the vision and the mission of the Dominica Freedom Party. So come on in, share the live, let everyone know that we're here. Let me go ahead and bring Mr. Paul Barron into the conversation. And we say, welcome aboard, Paul. Always great to see you.
Hi, good evening, Simone, and good evening.
Yes, so I think you just froze for a minute. Let's see if we can get you back on. So guys, come on in. Don't forget, as you come in, share the live. We are joined today by Dominica Freedom Party General Secretary, Mr. Paul Barron. Unfortunately, he just froze for a minute. So let me try to reach out to him. And as we're doing so, make a note of any questions you may have for him, you may have about the Freedom Party, and any questions you would like to share. So he's back with us. Paul, thank you again for being here. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
All right. Good evening, Simone, and good evening to the Dominican public, both here and in the diaspora. Let me just say it is an honor to be here this evening. As always, I am grateful for having been afforded the opportunity to speak with the Dominican people, to discuss matters of national interest, but more so of universal concern to us as Dominicans. And of course, to make known of my recent appointment as General Secretary of the Dominica Freedom Party, as it relates to the political dynamics and landscape in the Commonwealth of Dominica, as we seek to bring about meaningful change to our communities, of course, and to ensure that Dominicans live a very prosperous and fruitful life.
Yes, so you've been with us before on this program, but it's been a while. So kind of just give us a little bit about who you are, your background, both professionally and politically.
Okay, so professionally, I'm the CEO of Eden Consultancy. It's a real estate and insurance-based agency. And as a complement, we also offer services in communication and also travel and transportation. Politically, I've been involved in politics pretty much all of my life, and I continue to look towards avenues rather, whereby I can advance the trust assets of Dominica, and that is for the collective development of every Dominican. My emphasis for some time has been around youth development with a focus on employment, job creation, and also harnessing the capacity of the Dominican public and to ensure that we all live meaningful lives. I'm a father and also I have a young daughter. Some of you may know Culture Baron, and also a son, Alexander Baron. And so all these activities keep me very engaged, involved, and well-rounded, as my social studies teacher would have told me in high school.
Yeah, so it sounds.
I'm also a student,
Uh-huh.
and I'm a student of continuing education, and of course I'm readily always seeking to improve academically.
Mhm. Absolutely. So I think it's been a while since we've heard from the Dominica Freedom Party. We know you have a program every, I believe, every first of the week of the month. One,
Wednesday.
yes, every first Wednesday of the month. But other than that, we just want to know what is currently going on with the Freedom Party. So tell us about the Freedom Party. Maybe you can share a little bit of the history of the Freedom Party, and then tell us about the Freedom Party today while I continue to share our program.
Historically, the Dominica Freedom Party, as many persons have known, had ruled for 15 years under the leadership of our deceased Dame Eugenia Charles. Many Dominicans are, in fact, Freedomites, and many still do have Freedom DNA, having been involved in the party. The Freedom Party is known for being the most unifying party in the Dominica political landscape. And when I say unifying, I mean really appealing to the people, their needs, of course, and their aspirations and dreams. We functioned at a time which was critical in Dominica's development as it regards, at that point, post independence. And so it meant for us that we would have had to lay down the foundation on which we now currently enjoy as Dominicans, anywhere from our education system of health, commerce, some of the laws that governs our activities in Dominica, and a number of initiatives. Then we are known as a conservative party, and of course, politics in the political arena. There are different types of political parties. Some are left, some are right, some are liberal, some are down the middle, extreme left, extreme right. The Dominica Freedom Party is what you consider a conservative party, and it really appeals to the trust assets of a country, or in that case, the Commonwealth of Dominica. It speaks to the people, it speaks to the resources of the country, but above all things, what we prided ourselves on is integrity, especially integrity in public office, and also to put people before power and to put people before things. We know that politics can be characterized by significant levels of corruption or rent seeking ventures by the persons who have been given the opportunity to serve. And that is where the Freedom Party really stands at guard. We are a party known as to rescue and recover. And I will say that again, rescue and recover. It is on the basis that the Freedom Party in all cases have stepped in when Dominica is at the point of what we consider serious economic or social malice. Back then, the rescue and recovery and recover would have transpired in the late deceased Prime Minister PJ Patrick John. And what we saw then was that the country and the political direction it was taking was on a dangerous path. And as a result of that, the Freedom Party had to pull together to rescue, recover the country to the state that it would be. Of course, priding ourselves on a democratic society. So that is as far as our history goes. The future of the Dominica Freedom Party is nothing really new to the political landscape arena. I think the Dominicans are not fully acquainted with the idea that political parties have life cycles with everything else. It's purely the laws of physics. We go up, we come down. You pivot, you grow, and you plummet. That is the real order of things, and that law cannot be broken. Because of that, the political, uh, what I would say, powers that be, and I don't mean that to say a political party, but the system of things, if you want to consider it, deemed the Freedom Party at that time as being on a sort of downward trajectory. Of course, there was an attempt to still remain in the political arena by forming a coalition government with the Dominica Labour Party, of of which we've now we have inherited, whether directly or indirectly, having participated in it. But we had reached significant levels of prominence. Our international policies, our friends in the region and abroad were very confident in our leadership. Of course, now the future of the Freedom Party would mean, therefore, that we would have to rebuild, would have to rebrand, reposition, revitalize if you want to consider it. But what we want to lean on is the successes of the past. And when I go out for the length and breadth of Dominica, I often come across individuals who see no issue at all with the Freedom Party rebuilding itself. Because I've spoken to laborites, UWPites, and they would say, man, that is a very good thing. Because the moment you mention the Freedom Party, they can immediately identify with it, whether it is them directly, their parents or their grandparents. So we are now at the position of rebuilding the party.
Right. And what exactly is being done to revitalize the party? So, what are you guys, for example, doing on the ground in Dominica?
Well, as you would imagine, a political party is an organization as any other, business or social or civil, rather. And because of that, one of the first things that has to take place is the organizational structure of that particular institution. So we are at the point at which, as you can now attest to by my appointment as General Secretary, um, as part of signaling the design to rebuild and grow the organizational structure of the institution. Of course, it is a step-by-step process. We recognize that this is not a sprint; it's really a marathon. What we want to do, of course, collectively, is to appeal to the wider Dominican public, people who are what I consider interested in rescuing and recovering their country, and to come and join hands with our efforts. But we're really at that point in terms of what you consider, uh, for a more popular term, talent search. Yeah.
Exactly,
Of
absolutely.
course.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And of course, we're saying good evening to everyone who's logging in on the Facebook. Don't forget to share the live as you're coming in. We see Simone James, Cyril Lloyd, Alvin Thomas. Always great to have you on board. So, guys, thank you for being here as we have this very engaging conversation with the new General Secretary of the Dominica Freedom Party, Mr. Paul Barron. So, Paul, tell us about the role of the General Secretary.
The General Secretary is a crucial role within any political party and functions under the direct supervision of the political leader in conjunction with the chairman of the party, of course, and aligned with the other executive members. And the responsibility of the General Secretary is to ensure that the organizational structure runs smoothly, to ensure that the executive functions within the party are aligned with the constitution and the goals of the party. To record, of course, as you would imagine, to record all activities of the party in respect to its various outreaches, various executive meetings, anywhere meetings with various interest groups, people within the community, organizations, business or social or civil. So it is really a very holistic approach towards a sort of managerial responsibility of the party. A lot emanates from the general secretary because that individual would be the go-to person in terms of party affairs, and because of that, one must always readily be available to serve or called upon and to take action thereon.
Yeah, no, you talked about talent search, which is the stage you guys are currently at right now at the Dominica Freedom Party. But have other members of the party be elected at this point?
Well, it is important to note that there was already an executive before I was appointed general secretary of the party. There are other executive members that are serving, and because of that, in different capacities, of course, the what you consider vacancy exists within the party for the position of general secretary, and then at that point it was a unanimous vote among the executive that as an individual I would be best suited for that role. And I really want to extend my heartfelt appreciation to the executive of the Dominica Freedom Party, the leader and the chairman as well, for putting that level of trust and confidence in my ability to contribute to the Dominica Freedom Party.
Yeah, and we know that the party leader is Mr. Bernard Ito, but can you tell us about some other members of the Dominica Freedom Party?
Well, I'd be happy to see some of the persons that have been working, that are currently working with us, and they're really no strangers to the political arena in Dominica. Some of the individuals include Johnson Boston, whom you may know, Mrs. Noelis Didier, Ashton Riviere, Norma Cyril. These are some of the what we consider the foundational or the rock on which the party is currently being built. Yeah. Of course,
Yeah,
there are
and
also
yeah.
members serving in the diaspora as well, and because we have a very active diaspora community who regularly contributes to the development of the party.
And I think one of the criticisms we heard when the prime minister called the snap elections a couple of years ago was that none of the opposing party had a full slate of candidates to contest that particular election. So, what would happen if the prime minister was to call election maybe next year? Would the Dominica Freedom Party be ready to contest that election?
I'm not really surprised that the prime minister would say something like that. One of the things that the political parties, opposition parties, have been arguing for a long time is an even playing field. We would expect that can be achieved with the what would consider the passing of the bill in respect to the electoral reform, and we hope that it can address some of those inconsistencies. If it doesn't, then it will continue to be a challenge for any political party to present a full slate of leaders, especially on the basis that elections can be called at the whims and fancy of the political leader of the ruling party. So it is really no surprise that he would say something like that.
Yeah, so I guess the question was, would you guys be prepared though if elections were to be called next year?
What I can say, in fact, is that we are in the process of rebuilding our party, and we
Okay.
are in the process of reaching out to individuals who have the capacity and willingness to serve the Dominican people, and that is a continuing process,
Right.
as it is anticipated by the wider Dominican community that the Freedom Party will get to the position of strength where they can continue, they can begin and resume identifying with the Dominica Freedom Party. This is a work in progress, Simone,
Yes.
and it
Yes.
continues to be so.
Right.
We are not dumbfounded by the idea that this can happen overnight. And as I indicated to you earlier, this is a marathon and not a sprint. What I can tell you safely is that success is when opportunity meets preparation.
Now, before we talk about what the Freedom Party is offering Dominica at this point, what is the stance on electoral reform? What is the party's stance on electoral reform?
Well, the party has always made it very known in public that we welcome electoral reform. I know we oppose to electoral reform. What we can say is that we would hope that the government, who has the responsibility, or the parliamentarians, I would think, because the government is a separate entity from parliament, we would hope that the bill and the intent to present the bill in parliament would be informed by the opposition parties' recommendations put forward. If that is done safely, we can we can all compete, and that is really what we are seeking to do. You have to appreciate and understand that the political party having been at the helm of our political process for well over 2 decades would have a fair advantage over other political parties. Electoral reform is seeking to address that huge gap, so to speak, that huge divide, and that is what we're seeking to achieve mostly. But the bills, the reform that is intended to be tabled to Parliament, if it does not take on the recommendations of the political parties, because my understanding is not only not only will or it should not only be emanating from the ruling party or the parliamentarians who have the responsibility to put the bill forward. It has to come from different interest groups, as you're aware, the Electoral Reform Coalition Committee, civil society, civil organization. Because this electoral reform thing is not about political parties; it is about the Dominican people and their rights to universal suffrage, or in that case, the ability to vote. We are seeking to achieve a more democratic society, which is dangerously leaning to the far left.
Yeah, and one of the things we're seeing is that we get the impression that this whole electoral reform process is like a can getting kicked down the highway, because we know that the prime minister has already missed a deadline. He was supposed to come back with something at the second week of April, and now tomorrow is May 1st. So is it
Exactly.
realistic to believe that
Exactly.
Dominica will in fact get electoral reform?
Yeah, exactly. Um, well, it has to mean that in a very ideal situation, all political parties are intended to benefit from the reform. What is happening now is that the political system and process in Dominica is well organized to favor the ruling party. If the ruling party feels that they will be disadvantaged as a
Right.
result of reform, they are not likely to push ahead with the same enthusiasm that we do as the opposition-led parties. So I can well imagine that deadlines will be set and missed, and continue to be so.
Yeah, which is unfortunate. And it kind of begs the question, where do we go from here if we're just going to be setting deadlines and missing deadlines? And, there was a very passionate conversation on Talk on the Block on Q95 today. And the guest, Mr. Severin McKenzie, who's not, as he states, a part of any political party, he was recommending that the political parties who have a vested interest in the electoral reform process should be at the forefront, pushing more for electoral reform. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I
That
think
the onus is on the political parties.
a large part of what the political parties needed to do has already been done, Simone, to be very
Okay.
honest with you. It has already been done because the government was tasked to bring in the renowned Justice Dennis Byron to look at the question of reform. Further to that, we had the recommended bill. Um, so the political parties, and I don't want to limit the conversation to only the political parties, because the political parties really are not the only one that have been involved in this process, and we
Right.
need to understand and appreciate that. So the work that needed to be done has been done. What we are The point at which we are is to push the ball across into the goal, and reform will never be achieved unless it becomes law, and that is by way of passing the bill in Parliament. The bill, as I've said just now, has to take on the recommendations that was brought forward by Sir Byron, in addition to the recommendation that is continued to be put forward by the Electoral Reform Coalition Committee and the political parties and the various interest groups that have been involved in this process from day one.
Yeah, absolutely.
It
Now
is, it
let's
is
get
just
back.
it is just unfortunate that we still have to rely on the parliamentarians or the legislature to pass the bill. And
Yeah,
that is where it is.
absolutely.
And further to that, the legislature is made up of majority of the ruling party. The
Yeah.
dynamics of our executive arms of government is Dominic is quite unique in the Caribbean. In fact,
Yeah.
as you just mentioned Q95, I was privy to one of the, I think yesterday, and a gentleman, I was having a conversation with my uncle, and made a point, and a gentleman happened to say the same point, and that point being the parliamentarians should seek to have the best interest of their constituents. Because as a parliamentarian, if your leader of your party is not aligned with your goals, is not aligned with your visions, and especially does things that disadvantages your constituents, you should have a moral responsibility to stand up in parliament in opposition of your own party. Because at the end of the day, your responsibility to your people. If we had a more If we had a more balanced, so to speak, legislature, we should expect very healthy, very humane, and very productive discussions in Parliament. But that is not the case today.
Yeah, and I want us to talk as well about the division that exists in Dominica. But before we do, kind of just tell us about the plans that the Freedom Party has for Dominica. I heard one person comment today that Dominica is a country running without a plan. There does not seem to be a
Running without
strategic
a
plan
what?
without a plan. So
Oh,
there does
run.
not seem to be a strategic plan for the various industries, the various sectors of Dominica. So let us kind of talk about the vision. What is the Dominica Freedom Party presenting to Dominicans by way of a strategic plan that includes, the economy, the healthcare, education, and training, and all that is needed to move Dominica forward?
One of the more critical things that we have to look at from a purely economics perspective is we have to look at our comparative advantage and our position that we occupy in the region and the world. Many people claim to the fact that Dominica does not have resources, but I have never held that notion to be true. There are various industries that can be developed, namely agricultural to include fisheries, agro processing. We have to also be very consistent with where the world, the position that the world is taking right now in respect to technology, right? Fortunately, Dominica has a very literate population and very learned population, and I credit Dominicans for being so smart. We have to be at the position where we can harness that knowledge base. Job creation is absolutely important, and that will always be a priority of our party. Unemployment plagues the Commonwealth, and many seek but cannot find jobs. We also have to be very consistent that tourism will provide a vast opportunity for us. But unless those benefits are trickled down to the larger population, then we will not be achieving real success. We also have to be very consistent in preparing our country, making it ready to attract individuals who are willing to come. Because fortunately, I'm in the travel business and I get to interact with a number of travelers um, from all parts of the world. And there's always recommendations, things that we need to do, whether it be the improvements of our sites, whether it be the availability of things to them, the transportation, the conveniences of making purchases. Um, it is unfortunate that the government should be the only responsible party to ensure that an economy can sustain and provide services to individuals or travelers visiting our islands. The private sector has an equal role to play as well. I agree that the enabling environment needs to exist. We also have to recognize that not everybody can be gainfully employed, and because of that, entrepreneurship continues to be a huge driver of economic growth in most countries, if not all throughout the world. And we have to be willing to understand, hear, and listen to the plans and visions that our young Dominicans have, some of the ideas that they have, and be able to finance those or provide the relevant financing for those to ensure that they, in fact, can tap into their innate abilities to create a product or a service and offer it. I believe to be truly successful, we as a country have to move from being consumers or consumer oriented and to become producers, therefore. And as a result of that, we need to also focus on our manufacturing industry. It is really had painstaking to see the products that we have on our supermarket shelves, and some of the things that we consume that we can already readily make there. All the technologies
Yeah,
exist.
especially water. I was shocked to
Exactly,
see water for
exactly.
sale in Dominica from other islands.
Exactly. All the technologies exist. It is a lot easier to do things than it was 20, 30, 40 years down the line. So there should really be no excuse why we are not manufacturing uh, some of the fruits that we have, the vegetables we have. I was speaking with a Rastaman recently, someone I normally speak with quite a bit, and he told me that our oceans is sufficient enough to fill our treasuries because we have some of the most the richest fishing banks in the Caribbean, but yet we are not processing fish to any great extent. We are not selling fresh fish to neighboring islands to that great extent. We may be deficient at different times of the year. So it is really a sort of collective approach to ensuring that the trust assets we have, but we have to identify what those resources are and how we can capitalize and monetize those resources. So I made mention of agriculture. This will continue. However much the powers that be seeks to evade it, I don't understand its true potential. Tourism, agriculture, tourism, manufacturing, of course, with a subset of agro-processing, the knowledge economy. We have to be able to tap in that and to ensure that young Dominicans can uh, become part of this global village with the relevant skills that are available to them. It- the question of health and education is always going to be a direct responsibility of any government because these are public goods. And as a result of that, what we could seek to do to enhance to ensure, firstly, that the first responders, the nurses, the doctors, the firemen, the educators, the teachers, that they are fairly compensated. All right, that is important. When you treat the government like an organization, you recognize that your human resource is actually your most critical resource, and so we need to address all those things. I've always maintained that one of the crucial things that we should do once we're afforded the opportunity to do so, is to return the government or the business of the public to the public service. Because what we have happening essentially is there's too much meddling. And in economics, they teach us that every time a government has too much meddling or too much expenditures in an economy, that by itself becomes a problem. A government should not be the largest spender in any economy, be it the US, be it Dominica, or any country for that matter. And so the private sector should equally be afforded or provided or given an enabling environment to be the engine of growth. So these are just somewhat obviously 1 hour is not sufficient
Yeah,
to look
absolutely.
at the
We
master
understand that,
plan.
but yeah, but I
But
think you're
these are
making
some
good
of
headway.
yeah, these are just some
Yeah,
of the things that we need to do as a people.
yeah.
Um, yeah,
And I think it's important that you're mentioning the top priority of the party because we often hear the expression, if not the CBI, then what? But we are filled with resources such as
yeah,
water, rain, water, sun, and fertile soil.
yeah.
So
That's
agriculture has to play a major role in terms of attracting young people to agriculture and letting them know that agriculture is not just simply digging in the dirt. There's now
no.
technology. I see we have Davidson Lloyd on our program this evening, and I'm so happy he's here with us because he can speak on technology that's involved in agriculture as well. So we have to make it exciting for young people. And I'm also happy that we're having this conversation because it answers the questions, if not the CBI, then what? But also, what would be the plan with the CBI program from the Dominica Freedom Party? Would you guys keep the CBI? What would be the plan with regards to the CBI investment program that we currently have in Dominica?
The CBI has remained for the larger part of, uh, since it has been implemented, a source of revenue for the government. It would be impractical if and when we get into office to disband the CBI program. So that's really not something that we intend to do. What that has to happen, and it is not only coming from us, but as we have seen from the international interest groups and relevant country organizations, that there need to be some level of transparency with the program. Transparency and accountability, I think, are the two most important watchwords with the CBI program. The CBI shouldn't be a business of hush hush. In fact, if the business of selling passport is what will continue to uh, generate income for the country, uh, every Dominican has a right to know um, how this revenue are attained and to what extent they're being used and how in turn their lives will be affected as a result. What we can say of the CBI in Dominica and most people can point to is the housing revolution. which has benefited a great number of Dominicans. The extent to which they're empowered by that program is questionable because all the property belongs to the state. You know, it is a shame that today, this evening, that Dominicans are sleeping in homes that technically does not belong to them, and there are some real
Yep.
examples. In fact, when someone becomes deceased, the locks are changed on their doors almost overnight, and
Crazy.
that is unfortunate. We have to also ensure that the individuals that we give the responsibility to act as agents, sub agents, local agents, marketing agents, and such do justice with the CBI program. The business of selling someone or a country's nationality, its sovereignty, its unalienable rights as afforded by the Constitution is not something to be treated like a flea market, so to speak. And so there's some concerns that have been brought forward. We have seen the repercussions of what can be deemed the mishandling of the program, as the most recent having lost our access to visa free entry access to the UK, and some of those things. I know regionally there has been the attempt to address the inconsistencies by unifying. That is commendable, but it is something that we have to guard. There's no doubt that it has contributed to the country. The extent to which it has contributed, who has benefited is what I believe is questionable.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And I'm happy
because
we're talking about. Yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
just to say that if anything is being done in a country, if it is not proportionate to the larger population, that it really would have failed um, the general purpose. Because while many people may be in homes, a vast majority of people are without homes, right? While many people have been given opportunity, a vast majority of people have not received opportunity. And Dominica is a very small community where only 72,000 people, as it is uh, um, highlighted on the World Bank. Um, um, it is not fair to a Dominican to know that his nationhood is investment vehicle or an investment option to bring returns to the country, and they are not a beneficiary of that. You understand? And
Right.
what has happened is that the CBI, there's a culture around the CBI, and as a result, the intent really is to fuel and support the base of the ruling party, persons who have economic interest in the various programs. So yeah, I just it's really disheartening, Simone. When I think about those things, it's really disheartening, and sometimes I used to question why I've been involved for so long in the political process in Dominica, and I ask myself that regularly. It is very disheartening to know that a country with so few people, an abundance of resources, but yet at the grips of poverty, and lacking opportunity. And I suppose for the better part of things, that is the reason why the good Lord calls me and positioned me to continue to be part of this process. I suppose almost as if it would appear somewhat of wanting to be a mosaic example in Dominica so that we can lead our people out of Egypt.
Yeah, and I think a lot we're talking a lot about the economy because the focus has to be on revitalizing the economy. But I'm thinking about the relationship with the Chinese government and MMCE and what we hear a lot of reports that Dominicans are not benefiting enough from these relationships. So how would the Dominica Freedom Party navigate that to ensure that Dominicans are receiving opportunities from these ventures? Because it cannot be that we're hiring Chinese companies and they're hiring Chinese workers to the detriment of Dominican employees, especially our young men, where we're seeing a lot of depression in our young men. And unfortunately, we're even seeing that a few of them have committed suicides because there's a sense of hopelessness. So let's talk about two things, Paul. Let's talk about navigating the relationship between the Chinese and MMCE, and let us talk about the hopelessness, because I was recently in Dominica and I just felt there was this sense of hopelessness in Dominica. It felt like a lot of people were like hamsters in that little wheel, just going round and round and round, but not really in a forward direction. There's a lot of, you feel stagnant when you're in Dominica. So how do you revitalize, energize the people, create that work ethic that you and I most likely grew up in, that made us who we are today? So two parts to the questions: navigating those relationships with our foreign investors and reversing the hopelessness in Dominica.
Well, to be honest with you, Simone, every relationship is built on mutual gains and benefits.
Should
And
be.
sometimes when I consider these foreign policies, I often wonder what is brought to the table, right? So if you look at the example, and just to note, I have many Chinese friends and counterparts, and in China there's this belief and there's this philosophy that is built around cooperation, right? Cooperation, but more importantly, the ability to support persons who are not doing well, right? Because if you understand China, China has been, for the better part of half of the century, is squarely focused on raising its people out of any form of economic or social malice. Granted that a wide, there's still there's still poverty as it exists globally, right? But when it relates to the relationship that we have with China, there is no question on my mind that if the powers that be have a very candid, have a very serious, but yet sincere and diplomatic conversation, right, with these companies, with these ambassadors, with these representatives, to understand that ultimately my people need to get as much as it possibly can from this deal. Nurturing relationships have to mean that your people stand to benefit the most. Now, it is important to note that if you're coming into my country, granted, there will be resources, there will be personnel. It happens globally that will come into focus. But we have to benefit as a people. And I hear the complaints. I travel, I commute to from Portsmouth to my farm on a regular basis, and I hear the complaints that many Dominicans have, that they're not getting. There should be more opportunity for the truckers. There should be more. But if your people are crying, if your people are literally, I mean, there's this belief, Simone, as creators, right? Any form of creator that you have to listen to your audience, right? If the powers that be, the administration, listen to their audience and address the concerns, there will be no issues to have concern over. What is happening essentially is that the Dominican people are not being listened to, right? Their their opinions, their suggestions, their needs are not being addressed in a very meaningful way. So we find we have problems. Now, just
But
before you come in, the question of the international airport as a capital project. There is no one, I believe, in Dominica, in their, whether differencing of opinions or not, would think that this is not a good project for the country. And we have
right.
to attest to that, right? What we should seek to do is to ensure that as a result, in its development, in its construction, in its in realizing that goal, that the largest share of the population gets to benefit. And that is where the challenge lies. There should be a mediator between these organizations and of course the administration, and what the intent is. And the intent should be to help Dominicans.
Yeah, but Paul, I have to play devil's advocate on this one because I think we hear a lot from folks who believe that this is actually a political strategy to keep Dominicans unemployed so that they have no choice but to continue to go to the government and hold them in high regard. So they will continue voting them in power because they have no other choice but to
It's
beg
called
for their
it's
daily
actually
bread. So do you
it's
think it's a
actually
political
called
strategy?
it's actually called a dependency syndrome.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
that is what it
yes.
is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I would know and understand that full well. And yes, it is a political strategy, and yes, it has been used by many narcissistic leaders throughout our history, and not limited to
And
Dominica,
around the world.
around the world. It is no surprise, really, because I'm happy you said that, because when we looked at the agricultural sector, and we assessed agriculture on a whole, many people don't realize that agriculture is tax free,
Hmm.
right? Agricultural income is tax free, right? What it means is that if you make $100,000 in agriculture, you're only likely to pay VAT when you go to the supermarket or reinvest your funds. The reason why in the under the Dominica Freedom Party that Dominica was so buoyant economically is because the agricultural industry was thriving. Many men and women you see in Dominica occupying significant positions of power were sent to school by agricultural means or farms. People built their homes as a result of that. People bought vehicles as a result of that. People were able to go on vacation as a result of that, help their neighbors and the likes. So the moment that the administration recognized that there's just too much power, a farmer has too much power, so to speak, right? There has been a consistent effort to take that power away from them. And most of those plans, most of these strategies originates from either social, quasi-socialist, or fully communist regimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. So before we wind down this evening, I see the time is speeding ahead.
Yes,
We
time
also
flies
have to
by.
talk. Yes, I know, I know. We also have to talk about the youth of Dominica because, as we all know, the youth is the future of our country, and I'm very concerned for our young people. They seem very disconnected. You know, they seem to be swimming in a culture of SIWO, and now we see the legalization of just a couple of joints of marijuana. So I have a lot of concern where it comes to our young people. So how does the Dominica Party plan on engaging, re-engaging the young people, energizing them to want to be a part of the political process, to want to invest in their future. But before you answer that question, let me just say a pleasant good evening to Desmond Abraham. Magala Rock is here with us, and she says we are desperate. We are in desperate need for new management. And of course, my mom, Medina Senhouse, great to see you. Senhouse, thank you for being here. So, guys, if you want to be acknowledged, you can post a comment, and I will be sure to acknowledge that you're here. And I know that you're listening very intently, so we appreciate you being in the audience. Yes, so go ahead, Paul. Our
Well,
young people, how do we re-engage them?
Well, you see, in the with the lack of opportunity, young people are most likely, um, are most vulnerable, right? Um, this is not a new phenomenon. Of course, there are a number of success stories. What is happening to the Dominican youthful population is that there is a lack of opportunity, right? Now, in the face of lack of opportunity, meaning gainful employment, an opportunity to express oneself, an opportunity to participate in anywhere from music to arts to clean social fun and recreation. None of that exists, right? Our culture is almost none but extinct. Many Dominican young people do not know truly what it is to be Dominican anymore. They can attest to the fact that they love their country, and I believe that, and I support them for that. But the question on their mind is how can their dreams and aspirations be achieved within the Dominican society? It is one thing to educate someone, it is a second, it's an entirely different thing to have them gainfully employed. Economic pressure breeds social pressures. That is really how it works. If someone does not have opportunity, someone that cannot be gainfully employed, someone cannot bring food on the table, help their girlfriend, help their mother, help their partner, it it will it is guaranteed to breed domestic issues. And that is what we see happening with a number of spits of violence and the likes. The other more likely thing to occur as a result of that is that you will want to dull your senses. You're a doctor of psychology, right, Simone? And that is usually the next step. When you are faced with extreme pressure, you want to dull your senses. You do not want to be reminded of your problems. And because of that, you channel your energies to entertainment, excessive partying, excessive drinking, excessive smoking. So to really address those things there, we firstly have to present the Dominican people, young people, with opportunity, and it has to stop with job. It has to start rather with job creation, right? One of the more important things that we have to do and to address as a party, which is not already being done, is to properly capture and the data in respect to the unemployed. I guess unemployment is a unique thing. You cannot simply say that you're unemployed. You must be actively looking for a job to be considered unemployed. But where do you register your unemployment status? One of the more crucial things that should exist in Dominica, which the government has been bashed time and time over, especially with funds coming from the CBI, is to what extent you are offering unemployment benefits to the unemployed. I mean, every known economy and country in the world offers unemployment benefits. And with the vastness of resources that we have accrued under the CBI program, that should not be a problem. You have to be able to take care of those who cannot take care of themselves for a minimal period of time. It doesn't have to be very long. But once you register your unemployment, Mr. Sir, I can't work. I'm looking for work, but I have my young daughter, I have my young son. I need to be considered for an unemployment benefits. I get 800 to 1,000 to $2,000 based on your status. That should be well enough to ensure that you can stay um, you know, on level grounds. But in the absence of these programs, in the absence of this even consideration, young people have no choice. It's unfortunate as a result of that, there's an increase in mental health issues. And people don't understand the uniqueness of the mind. The mind functions similarly as an organ. And if it is not receiving the right support systems, it will fail. And that is why we have these rising in mental health issues in the Commonwealth of Dominica,
Yeah, and
resulting in suicide and
and
all
you
that.
know, it is so true. Matt Peltier often says Dominica is pregnant with issues, and we can spend the entire night talking about issues. Peter Thomas, great to see you. He says good night, great program. But Paul, the one of the final things we want to talk about before we wind down is Dominica just seems to be very divided on so many different levels, but especially with regards to politics. So one of the questions that comes to mind, thank you, Omar. Omar is reminding everyone to share the live. Thank you so much, Omar, for being here. And Peter also says very good idea, Paul Barron. So thank you for that. Thank you for your contribution. But
Thank you.
again, going back to the division in the politics, Paul, and one of the questions which I think is quite a valid question is why doesn't the opposing parties come together and form a coalition to stand a better chance of defeating the incumbent government right now? So I think that is an important question. What are your thoughts on that?
You can see that I'm smiling, right?
I know.
Because yeah, what I
I
can
don't think
say
that's a good
safely
thing.
what I can say safely about that is there's a dangerous, sour, and bitter taste on the minds of the Dominican voters and also leaders, and I mean leaders in political parties and civil organizations, that a coalition government, they wonder if truly it will work. Because what we are benefiting from right now is a coalition government.
Yes.
Now we have to understand that the only political party, and that's where my smile came in, the only political party that has successfully led for such a long period of time outside of a coalition led government was the Dominica Freedom Party, right? Of course, we had the UWP having served for some time as well. Now, a difference of opinion will always exist among leaders. What is important to note is whether we can put our egos apart and our own agendas. And I
Hmm.
don't mean agendas for the public or the interests of the Dominican people, but our own personal agendas. So the whole question of leadership, Simone, must be assessed on the basis of who you are as an individual, because everything emanates from you. The Bible suggests that if the head is bad, so is the nation. So within every organization, the leader must be fairly assessed and determined if, in fact, they can achieve the stated objections, sorry, the stated intentions that you have mentioned, forming a unification of political parties. If you want to look within the region, you can also assess it. We recently had the fallout of the Team Unity Party in St. Kitts, which we thought at that time was the perfect solution for the political arena and landscape in St. Kitts, but clearly it did not work. And there are many examples throughout the world. I am not saying that we cannot unify on policy and issues, that the collective bargaining approach towards developing the country. The question remains: can we all lead together? And that is where the individual self has to be assessed. So that is as much I will say as far as
Yeah.
coalition governments are concerned.
Yeah, and you raised some very good points. Hey, Alison Peltier, great to see you. She says very interesting ideas. So she's complimenting your ideas. So guys, thank you for being
Thank
here.
you.
Just as we're winding down, Paul, I think what we've seen over the last 20 years is a lot of empty promises to the Dominican people, right? And one of my favorite calypsos happens to be promises. I can pay my bills on promise, I can go to shop on promise, I can send my child to school on promise, because that is what we've seen in the past, that there's been a lot of empty promises offered to the Dominican people. So what will be different about the Freedom Party? How would you guys ensure that you're not just selling another set of promises to the Dominican people, so that you're giving them hope that under the Freedom Party, if you're voted in as the next government, that you're bringing to fruition the hopes. It is not just about having a strategic plan, but having an action plan of how you will implement your projects.
That's a very good question. I can tell you safely, the in my vast experience in being in politics, you do not make promises you don't have the ability to keep, and that is really the more important thing about politics anywhere. I know in some cases people wait 20 years for one promise, it came through, but no one should be given a false sense of hope. And the Freedom Party is not about giving Dominicans a false sense of hope. We are at the point where we understand that we need to pool resources. We need to identify individuals who want sort of the opportunity to serve, right? They will be fairly assessed on their ability to do so, character, integrity, accountability, transparency, the rubrics of good governance. That is what we're seeking to use as a measure by which we present people to the Dominican public. Because this business of, just wash your foot and come is not necessarily the best approach to our governance, as we have seen clearly over the last 24 years. You know, we have to understand that people's needs and livelihoods are serious issues that should not be meddled and played with. In fact, politics and to be a politician is an honorable job. It is
Yep.
today that we see it is being envisaged and portrayed and seen as something entirely different. If you are given a responsibility to serve, that remains your foremost responsibility, service. And it has to be service before self. The ruling party has continuously fashioned politics to mean a profit-seeking enterprise, a rent-seeking enterprise, which has led to extreme cases of corruption, which is beyond our ability to even understand. So we're not here to give Dominicans any form, in way or fashion, of any false set of hope. What we can say is, when given the opportunity to serve, you will have the opportunity to assess that which we do. And certainly, if it is not achieved, then you have the responsibility to make change. And that is
Or
your God-given right.
fire the political party, because one of
Yeah.
one of the promises I found especially disheartening was the minister. I'm forgetting her name at this point, but she stood on a platform and promised young people of Dominica that when they turned 21, they would all receive a lump sum money amount of cash. And
Yeah,
has
I
that
remember that.
promise come to fruition? No, and
That's what
that
I'm
is
telling
only
you.
one of a number of promises that was dangled as a carrot in the faces
Yeah.
of Dominicans to have them vote for the Dominica Labour Party, that we've seen has not come to fruition. And Margot
Yeah.
Larocque says it's best. She says, "Thank you, Mr. Barron. No more square pegs in round holes." So, Paul, as we get ready to wind down, and again, I want to thank you so much for reaching
Thank
out to
you.
me
It
to
was such a
tell
pleasure.
me to ask to come on the program. It's always great to engage in conversations with you. You've been on several of my programs, and I know that you're very qualified to be the general secretary
Thank
of the
you.
Dominica Freedom Party. And by the way, we just want to make sure that all the political parties know that they're welcome to this platform, because I not to brag, but I pride myself on being just about the only platform that has had members of all political parties currently in existence, from the Dominica Freedom Party, Dominica Labour Party, UWP, APP, and even TUD. So everyone is welcome. Is Papi still around? He's welcome to come too. I don't think Papi's
I'm
around.
sorry, I
Hey,
don't think
Naren,
so.
great to see you. Naren Murray is here, and he says, excellent program. As usual, thank you, Naren, for being here and for your support and for the work that you do for Dominica as well. So, Paul, your final, well, not your final, but what are your parting words as we wind down the program this evening?
Well, firstly, I really want to thank you for the opportunity. I believe it is always important to educate and inform the Dominican public about matters in respect to their development, and continue to do so. I believe that we are at a crucial point in our political process in Dominica, which will signify the or necessitate the coming together of minds and ideas as to how we rescue and recover our country, especially the democratic process. And so I feel very honored and humbled to be part of that process. And in so doing, I want to commit, as I have always done, to the Dominican public, to put their interests before um, my own personal expectations, or what it is, or what it can consider to be not aligned with the greater vision, which is to develop our country, and of course to hold our trust assets for the benefit of every Dominican. I want to single out my political leader, Bernard Ito, and of course, chairman of the party, Johnson Boston, for the continued confidence and in my ability to serve. Of course, I'd like to extend best wishes to the larger executive, as we continue to grow and develop the party. I look forward to working to everyone. And of course, to the larger Dominican public, we have always considered the Freedom Party to be somewhat of a safe haven. And so you are open to reach out to us if, of course, you want an opportunity to serve. And by service, I don't necessarily mean that you may want to run for office, but you may also want to be a part of the rebuilding efforts of the political
Yeah, and do you
party.
guys have any contact information that you can share with the general public?
I would have to provide these details as part of the comments. It's quite a lengthy amount of
Okay,
information
so
to
if you can post that as well
yeah.
in the comment section. Are you guys on Facebook? Not quite.
Facebook, yes, we're on Facebook.
Okay, as the Dominica Freedom Party.
That's correct.
Okay, so if anybody's interested in reaching the Dominica Freedom Party, please visit their Facebook page at Dominica Freedom Party, and you can try to message them in that way. But I want to thank everyone for being here. Just one final question, Paul. The Economic
Okay.
Summit. The Economic
Sorry.
Summit. Are you guys planning on being involved? Did you receive an invitation? Just final question. And
I
also
believe
keep in
I
mind
believe I believe
the
that
importance. One other thing, the importance
yeah.
of including the diaspora moving forward.
I'm sorry. The last
No, I
question.
said also keep in mind as the Dominica Freedom Party that you have to keep in mind the important role of the diaspora, the people who live
Right,
overseas
of
but are
course.
invested
Yes.
in Dominica. But just
Right,
quickly,
of
are you
course.
guys planning on being a part of the
Well,
economic summits?
yeah, the invitation is an open one to all political parties. The
Good.
extent to which we are participating is what needs to be determined. But certainly we will be engaged and contributing as participants or otherwise.
Okay, excellent. Well,
And
thank you very much.
in respect to the diaspora community, I've always had a very huge respect to every Dominican who has made the sacrifice to leave your homeland to go overseas for in search of economic prosperity. What I can say is I understand your concern in the direction that the country is taking, but the Dominica Freedom Party certainly is motivated to rescue and to recover and recover Dominica as we have always been tasked with that responsibility to do.
Yeah, so well, there's an open invitation so you guys can continue telling us how you're building your team, your plans for Dominica, and
Sure.
your plans moving forward in terms of rebuilding Dominica and rescuing Dominica. So I want to thank you for being here with us. If you
Thank
tuned in
you.
late, remember you can always catch the replay of this program on Facebook and YouTube at Push Past 10. I am Simone Matthew, and again, here on Push Past 10, we're all about advancing the lives of Dominican and Caribbean people at home and around the world, and we welcome our friends of the Caribbean who enjoy our culture. So guys, thank you for being here. Thank you for everyone who commented, who will share this program, and continue to follow Push Past 10 for more programs in the future. So with that, we say good evening and thank you for being here. So Paul will be in touch.
Thank you.
You take care. Thank you
Take
guys
care.
for being here. Take care.
Bye.
How much Dominican history do you know? Want to learn some fun facts? We have a great and fun way to test your knowledge and learn more about our history. Get your copy of Dominic Anu, Dominica in Puzzle. Fun for the whole family. Available now on Amazon.com. Visit pushpast10.com to learn more. Email us at dominicainpuzzle@gmail.com or call 877-698-9894.